Hey guys, Jordan here, and in this video we're going to be talking about shooting multiple exposures, so let's get into it. Alright, so if you're new to real estate photography, make sure to subscribe as I talk about real estate photography pretty much every day on this channel. Today's comment comes from, or question comes from, a video I made, HDR multiple exposure blending in Lightroom the easy way, and Lily Metcalf made a comment. Thank you, Lily, for your question. How do you take these, manually or do you use bracketing? So I'm a big fan of the path of least resistance to the result that you're trying to get, right? So if you're out just shooting HDR, if your camera can shoot, you do it automatically and you're not having to go through and change things manually, I say definitely do it automatically, right? So we do like to use brackets. It's just a drive mode within the Sony menu. You can go down and see I think it's 3 images at 3.0 exposure value, or it'll say 3.0 EV, so it'll shoot a -3, a 0, and a +3 just by doing one touch of a button. It'll do all that work, so you don't have to. You could do it manually. You could have it set to 0, shoot once, change it to -3, shoot it, or +3, or whatever you need. Typically, you know, from a real estate photography perspective, we like to just shoot the 0 and the -3, right? Because one, the +3, I mean, at the 0, we can get a whole lot of information out of shadows. So we're usually not trying to create more information in shadows from the images that we take, because we push them pretty far, and we can get to the result that we're looking for, at least with the 0 exposure. Now for windows, that's another thing, right? So -3 is typically, it's a good setting for a window setting. Now sometimes you might have a really dark interior, and you might even have to go beyond -3 exposure value to get a good crisp window. So if I'm doing it manually and I'm out shooting a property, maybe that day I'm just shooting single exposures, and I'm like, you know what, there's some great views out this window. I want to have a second exposure just to be able to bring in some more information from that windows. Then I'll shoot it manually, -3, or whatever I feel, where I just look out and, you know, just focused in on the windows on that exposure. And that's kind of how I dial it in. There's no like set science where it has to be 0, -3, +3. You know, these are good. You know, these are good rules of thumb for general things. But if you just think about piecing together a puzzle, or piecing together the image that you're trying to create for your end result, right? The 0 is typically pretty good. Sometimes we adjust it depending on the lighting, and we get a window exposure, and we can manually blend those together. That's typically a flambient style method, but simple. If you're just doing HDR and you're just getting into it, you don't want to deal with lighting. You can just edit HDR, blend them together. You know, like the video that I think you commented on was, you know that automatic blending, HDR merge in Lightroom, which I'm a fan of, because what it spits out is a DNG image that retains its native white balance information, where you can adjust the white balance, which is a big deal for real estate photography. And I think some people talk about JPEGs, RAW, or DNG. I talked about that in another video, but anyways, so let me make sure I touched on it. So yeah, manually, brackets, so both of them depending on the end result that you're trying to get. But at the end of the day, what I feel is best is to look yourself in the mirror and say, all right, what result am I trying to get? What's the path of least resistance to get that result, right? Yeah, you know, and for less errors, right? And it just makes things a lot more simpler if you're just doing automatic brackets and then get in front of your computer. You can auto stack by capture time. They're all neat little stacks of 3, and then use HDR merge, spit them out, and then edit those files. So that's a good workflow, but it really just depends on the workflow and the image that you're trying to do. If you're doing flambient, it's definitely a different process, a little bit more manual, a little bit more time consuming. So anyways, those are my thoughts on HDR merge. If you got value, hit the like button, and we'll see you guys on the next one.